Me and a bunch of other RecTubers got early access to Make It to Midnight, and we were lucky enough to sit down with some of the developers and talk about it. They are releasing some really cool things for people to use in their own games, but let's start with where the game came from.
Just thinking about how we came to Make It to Midnight as the idea, like just kind of looking at what we currently offer in the RO catalog, what are people trying to build today. It really felt like there is a neat spot for like a horror game. So I think the community will have a lot of fun with that. I personally have played like a lot of games like Dead by Daylight, so has been like a huge influence on this. So I felt really comfortable kind of approaching this game design and making it fit in the Rec Room and make it more along the lines of Rec Room mechanics and stuff like that.
Now, a while back when Showdown came out, there were some new tools that were created for people to make games, and Make It to Midnight is chock full of new features that are going to be coming out soon.
The big one that we're going to be releasing is the progression. We won't have the progression tools right at launch when we launch the game, but shortly thereafter, a couple months maybe, we're going to be releasing kind of the progression tools. We do have some other, I was thinking, swing handle is one of the other big ones, so it will be used for the bonky hammer.
I mean, one of our big kind of themes on this was taking a bunch of stuff that we had built and used in previous ROs and trying to kind of turn that stuff into things that were actually usable by the community. We've got the Melee Collider, which provides like much more reliable collision detection for melee weapons. We're taking locomotion, right? So how your players move around your room and kind of circuitizing a bunch of that. You can actually build circuit graphs that dictate how players can move around the space. So you can like enable and disable jumping and change their velocity and change how they move in response to the input. That's how a lot of the gameplay mechanics in Make It to Midnight are implemented.
Make It to Midnight probably uses like 5% of the capabilities that will be possible. Like if you want to make a double jump in your game that just uses your input, you totally can. If you want to make a double jump that goes into a ground pound, you can totally do that too. Like it's a really neat cross between having the circuits to like control locomotion and using real inputs from your control scheme to drive them.
And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's already in beta. The interaction volume, like hold timer stuff that was done, the data table stuff, the objective marker system,
the team radio chips,
the
haptic chip that came out of this.
And there were so many things, like so many chips that as we were going through and building this, we were sort of like, oh man, I wish I had a chip for that. Little things like the one that Rai Guy and I have talked about a bunch is clamp, like taking some value and clamping it to a particular range. Like we built a whole ton of stuff.
One of the biggest questions I had walking around this new map was I'm seeing these signs for all these different performers other than Bonky. Hints for new killers, perhaps?
So I think additional killers is kind of in the same category of if this turns out to be a really popular RRO, I think we have more reason to come back and juice it up.
Generally in the past, we haven't really gone back and added a lot of stuff to some of our RROs. We're always looking to like keep increasing the breadth of the game.
We wanted to do hammer skins and bonky skins, ended up cutting them for the initial release.
If this ended up being like the most played RRO ever, like it's conceivable we could come back to this later at some point, but I would say no for now, probably.
We also got to hear about some of the behind the scenes stuff, like how they chose Bonky as their monster, and some of the stuff that didn't quite make it.
Something we strive for with our first party games is to definitely have that all audiences appeal. It's not for kids, but it's safe for kids to play, and that's one that made Bonky such a good fit. Is you could have a squeaky hammer that still sounds satisfying and feels impactful, but it's not actually like bludgeoning people.
Yeah.
But this might be a fun time to talk about some stuff that's on the cutting room floor. So we actually had a handful of themes and monsters that were not a county fair with a clown.
One of the initial ones I remember that we were talking about was like a Yeti in like a frosty kind of village town kind of thing.
One was like a Friday the 13th camp, like a cabin by the woods kind of thing.
I think there's something unique about Rec Room in that the developers are always creating with other creators in mind.
It's one of like the big benefits of doing a project like this is that we're not just doing all of this work for an RRO and shipping it only for that RRO and it's not useful anywhere else. Like building an RRO like this makes the creation ecosystem better for everybody who's trying to build rooms.